Take a slow breath and let the weight of the day slip away. You're safe. You're warm. And the night is here to comfort you. Now, let your mind settle and drift gently into the story.
The night settled gently over the little winter town, a cool blue hush drifting through every silent corner. Snow floated downward in slow, graceful spirals, each flake turning, glimmering, catching the pale moonlight before melting into the soft blanket below. The rooftops shimmered faintly. Chimneys exhaled thin ribbons of smoke that rose into the crisp air. And every sound felt softened, wrapped in the quiet breath of winter. Lanterns along the street glowed like small halos, their warm light trembling just slightly in the cold breeze. Distant footsteps faded almost instantly, as if time itself was moving gently, carefully, refusing to disturb the peaceful stillness settling over the town. Yet beneath all that calm, there was something different tonight, a subtle hum in the air, a hidden spark of energy waiting patiently beneath the snow. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it was there, a quiet promise that the night, though peaceful, was about to shift into something softly extraordinary. Inside the little bookshop on Winter Street, Lila slid the last book into its place, the worn spine fitting neatly between two familiar favorites. She breathed out slowly, a gentle mix of comfort, routine, and a tiny hint of loneliness that always came at closing time. The shop smelled of old pages and cinnamon tea and the faint cold of melting snow from earlier customers. Lila turned off the reading lamps one by one, each soft click echoing softly through the quiet shelves. Warm golden pools of light faded across the floor, leaving the room wrapped in a gentle twilight glow. She lifted her midnight blue scarf, the one her grandmother knitted, and wrapped it carefully around her neck. Her fingers brushed the familiar stitch pattern, a ritual she never skipped before stepping outside. Through the window, snow whispered against the glass, moving in a rhythm she knew well, a winter lullaby the town had always sung. With one last look at her beloved shop, she smiled. "Good night, everyone," she whispered to the books, then locked the door behind her. Unaware that tonight, the quiet was about to change. The Snowlight Café sign glowed warmly in the cold night, its golden light spilling onto the street like a small beacon of comfort. Lila walked past it every evening, but tonight the glow felt richer, steadier, almost as if it were greeting her personally. The cafe windows were fogged with warmth from inside, a baker sweeping flour from the counter, someone stirring a steaming cup of cocoa, two friends laughing quietly near the back table. The whole place hummed with gentle life, a tiny pocket of warmth nestled in the frost. Lila paused for a moment, letting the sight ease into her chest. She thought about stepping inside, just for a sip of tea, just for a bit of company. But the air shifted around her, a soft, silvery breeze brushing against her coat. It carried a scent she couldn't name, something clean and cold, like new snow shimmering under starlight. The cafe felt safe and familiar, but tonight, something else was calling her attention, something quiet and quietly magical. As she walked deeper down the street, the snow seemed to glow faintly, not from lantern light, but from something more subtle, something beneath the surface. Then she saw movement near the far end of the block. Small, bright, shifting like silver flame. A fox. But unlike any fox she had ever seen. Its fur shimmered pale silver, almost translucent in the moonlight, as if made from frost and starlight woven together. Its eyes glowed softly, reflecting the night without a trace of fear. The fox stood completely still, watching her with an expression that somehow felt familiar. Lila blinked once, then again. But the fox didn't vanish. It only tilted his head slightly, his tail brushing the snow in a slow, deliberate motion. A warmth fluttered quietly inside her, an instinctive knowing that this creature wasn't lost or wandering by chance. It was waiting. A soft breeze curled around Lila's scarf, lifting a few strands of her hair, as though brushing her face in greeting. It carried a faint sound, so light she almost missed it. Lila. Her breath paused mid-air. The street was empty, silent except for the snow, yet she heard it again, clearer this time, a whisper drifting through the cold. Lila. The fox's ears flicked softly, its gaze still fixed on her, calm, encouraging, as if urging her to listen closely. The snow around them shimmered faintly, a quiet glow pulsing beneath the surface, like a heartbeat hidden within the winter night. Lila. The whisper floated once more, gentle, inviting, not a warning, but a call. She placed a hand over her chest, feeling her heartbeat slow, steady, as if aligning with the strange rhythm of the wind. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant to frighten her. It was guiding her forward. The fox stepped backward, its paws leaving delicate prints that glowed softly like tiny stars in the snow. Lila hesitated only for a moment, then followed. The snow beneath her boots shimmered, not cold, not harsh, but warm, like stepping into a familiar dream she couldn't remember having. Blue and silver ripples spread gently with each step, dancing beneath the surface like light moving underwater. The street around her faded slightly, the lanterns dimming, the air thickening with a quiet magic she had never felt before. The fox looked back once more, its eyes patient and luminous, inviting her onward. Lila inhaled deeply, steady, calm, and stepped fully into the glowing snow, crossing from the world she knew into the story that had been waiting for her to begin.
Snow drifted around Lila in quiet circles as the fox led her deeper into the glowing path. The familiar buildings of Winter Street blurred slightly at the edges, as if the town itself were breathing slowly, shifting, adjusting to her presence. Then she noticed it. A door. Standing alone where nothing had been before. Not attached to a wall, not part of any building, just a single wooden door framed in soft blue light, resting in the middle of the snow as calmly as if it had always belonged there. Its surface was carved with delicate swirling patterns, snowflakes interwoven with tiny constellations, lines that curved like frost tracing a window. Lila blinked, confused. She knew this street by heart. No cafe, no shop, no alley stood here. And yet the door felt familiar, like something from a dream she had forgotten the moment she woke up. The fox paused beside it, tail wrapped around its paws, looking at her expectantly, as if this impossible doorway was meant specifically for her. A soft glow pulsed from the cracks around the frame, inviting, calm, as though the night itself whispered, "You're ready." As Lila stepped closer, the door released a soft exhale of warm air, a comforting breeze scented with cinnamon, vanilla, and something cool and crisp, like freshly fallen snow. The warmth drifted over her face and wrapped around her shoulders like a familiar blanket. Light spilled from underneath the frame, not bright or blinding, but golden and steady. The kind of glow that made her chest loosen and her breath deepen without trying. The snow around the threshold melted into tiny glittering droplets that floated upward instead of falling. Little beads of warm light dancing gently toward the sky. She reached out a hand, hesitating only for a heartbeat. The warmth deepened, a soft, steady pulse that made her fingers tingle pleasantly. Behind her, the fox sat perfectly still, eyes glowing with quiet encouragement. The world outside felt colder by contrast. The silent street, the distant lanterns, the dark stretch of winter night. But here, before this impossible door, there was only calm, only warmth, only invitation. And somehow, she knew stepping forward would change everything.
When her hand brushed the carved wood, a soft chime rang through the air. Delicate, crystalline, like tiny bells made of winter light. The sound drifted around her slowly, curling through the snow in shimmering arcs of silver. It wasn't loud, it wasn't sharp, it simply existed, as if welcoming her with a melody the night had saved just for this moment. The bells chimed again, gentle, layered, each note falling like a snowflake landing perfectly on soft ground. With every chime, the glow around the door deepened, pulsing in soft rhythm with the music. The air smelled sweeter, the breeze felt softer. The snowflakes drifting through the light seemed to sparkle a little brighter, responding to the quiet harmony woven through the night. Lila let her eyes fall closed for a moment, letting the sound wash over her. Warm, delicate, familiar in a way she couldn't explain. It was as though someone, somewhere inside that door, knew she had arrived and was greeting her with music made of winter itself. Lila stood before the door, hand resting lightly on the surface, heart moving in slow, steady waves. A part of her whispered caution. This door wasn't normal. This wasn't something she could explain or understand, not fully. But another part, the quiet, brave part she rarely listened to, leaned forward with curiosity. The fox lifted its head, eyes shining with a soft, patient glow. It didn't push her. It didn't move closer. It simply watched, as if the decision was hers alone. She took a breath, snow-chilled air filling her lungs, followed by the warm drift coming from behind the door. two worlds, one familiar, one calling her name. Her fingers pressed gently, and the door opened with a soft, graceful sigh, a sound like warm fabric unfolding, or a memory being remembered. Golden light spilled around her, softening the edges of everything, including her fear. She stepped forward, one foot, then the other, crossing into the warmth that waited patiently on the other side.
The moment she entered, a warm wave of fragrance enveloped her. Cinnamon drifting gently through the air, blended with notes of clove, orange peel, and something cooler, like crisp winter mint. It was the scent of winter tea, a blend she hadn't smelled in years, not since childhood evenings, wrapped in blankets by a frosted window. The aroma curled softly around her, easing her shoulders, loosening the tension in her hands, inviting her deeper inside. The wooden floor beneath her boots radiated a comforting heat, as though warmed by a fire she couldn't yet see. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with tiny glass jars filled with glowing teas in shades of blue, silver, and amber. Steam drifted lazily from a kettle on a distant counter, and every movement within the cafe seemed unhurried, gentle, lingering, peaceful. Lila inhaled slowly, letting the scent settle deep inside her chest. It felt like home, in a way she couldn't explain. A place she had never been, yet somehow remembered. The golden light dimmed softly as Lila stepped farther into the cafe. There, by a small round table in the corner, sat the silver fox. Its fur shimmered under the warm lamps, pale as starlit snow, but touched now with a faint gold reflecting from the cafe's glow. It sat with perfect stillness, tail curled neatly around its paws, ears relaxed, eyes warm and knowing. As soon as their eyes met, a gentle calm settled over her, like someone smoothing out the creases in a tangled thought. The fox lowered its head slightly, as if offering her a seat. The chair across from it felt impossibly inviting. Soft cushions, warm wood, a place she hadn't realized she wanted to rest in so badly. She approached slowly, boots making soft taps on the wooden floor. The fox didn't move, didn't startle, didn't break its quiet gaze. It simply waited with the steady patience of something ancient and kind, as though it had brought her here for a reason she was finally ready to discover.
Lila had barely taken a step toward the fox when a soft rustle drifted from behind the counter, the kind of sound someone makes when they move with careful, deliberate grace. She turned and saw him. A tall figure stood beneath the cafe's hanging lanterns, his posture relaxed, hands loosely resting on the edge of the wooden counter, as if he'd been expecting her for a very long time. His presence wasn't loud or commanding. It was quiet, steady, like the warmth that lingers near a fireplace long after the fire has dimmed. He wore a long winter coat, the color of deep midnight, trimmed with subtle threads that shimmered like frost catching moonlight. His hair fell softly around his face, silver at the tips, dark at the roots, as though touched by winter and shadow alike. When he finally looked at her, Lila felt her breath pause. There was something deeply gentle about him, a warmth that didn't come from the lamps, or the fire, or the tea, but from him. As if this cafe, this impossible space between worlds, was a reflection of the calm he carried within. It wasn't until he stepped into the lantern light that Lila noticed his eyes. They glowed, not brightly, not unnaturally, but with a soft inner shimmer, like the last ember of a fading fire, or a snowflake held up to the sun. Silver at the edges, pale blue toward the center, a color she had never seen in another person, a color that felt alive. His gaze wasn't piercing or intense. It was warm, steady, the kind of look that made her feel as though she had been seen long before she ever walked through the door. He blinked slowly, as if careful not to startle her, and the glow softened, a quiet pulse in the dim cafe light. The fox, still seated at the corner table, tilted its head in approval. Lila felt something inside her relax, a knot she didn't realize she'd been carrying, loosening under his gaze. Those eyes, they held winter's stillness and something else beneath it. Something ancient, deep, and impossibly kind.
Calum lifted a hand and gestured gently toward a wooden wall near the entrance. Lila turned to look. There, carved into smooth, dark oak, were 6 simple rules, each one written in soft, glowing letters that pulsed like embers rising from warm tea. The rules were not commands. They read more like gentle reminders, guidelines whispered by the cafe itself. 1. Rest your heart at the door. 2. Memories may drift like snow. Do not fear them. 3. Speak softly. The walls remember kindness. 4. Share warmth when cold steps inside. 5. The fox protects the wandering. 6. Snowlight never leaves without permission. The glow around the letters shifted with the changing lantern light, casting soft reflections that danced across the ceiling. Lila felt a strange comfort reading them, as if these rules belonged to a place meant to soothe, not to control. Calum waited patiently, hands folded loosely, as if giving her time to absorb every carved word. Without a word, Calum turned toward the counter, lifting a kettle shaped like a silver crescent moon. Steam curled upward in slow, dreamy spirals. Soft blue at the edges, warm white at the center. He moved with a calm, practiced rhythm, scooping a small spoonful of shimmering leaves from a glass jar labeled Snowlight Tea. The leaves sparkled faintly as they fell into the cup, like tiny flecks of frost melting into warm water. The aroma bloomed almost instantly, a gentle blend of winter mint, soft citrus, and something warm that reminded Lila of quiet mornings she thought she had forgotten. Calum placed the cup in front of her with both hands, a silent offering, a moment of shared warmth. The tea glowed faintly within the ceramic, its light flickering gently like a firefly resting beneath the surface. Lila wrapped her hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep slowly into her palms, her fingers, her chest.
As Leela settled into the chair, the fox rose from its corner table with elegant, deliberate steps. Its paws made almost no sound as it crossed the wooden floor, its tail trailing behind like a silver ribbon gliding through light. It approached her warmly, circling once, twice, before lowering itself beside her boots. The fox curled into a perfect crescent, fur glowing faintly as though reflecting the light within her cup. She felt a soft warmth near her ankle, gentle and steady, a living comfort settling right at her feet. The fox let out a quiet breath, something close to a sigh, and Leela felt a wave of calm roll through her chest. Without knowing why, she reached down and brushed her fingertips along its soft fur. The fox didn't move. It simply closed its eyes and leaned into her touch, as if it had been waiting for that exact moment. Outside, the winter wind shifted, not violently, but gently, like a memory exhaling in the dark. It brushed against the cafe windows with a faint whisper, a soft hush that blended seamlessly with the warm creaks of the wooden walls and the dim hum of lantern light. The wind didn't sound cold anymore. It sounded thoughtful, almost curious. Snowflakes tapped lightly against the glass panes, as if trying to catch her attention, soft rhythms that matched the slow rise and fall of her breathing. Calum glanced toward the window, his eyes glowing faintly, as though he understood the wind's language and had been listening to it all along. Leela held her warm cup closer, letting the glow reflect in her drifting gaze. The wind whispered again, a lingering, delicate sound, almost like it was calling her name. And for the first time since stepping into the cafe, she wondered whether the night outside had followed her in for a reason.
The corridor opened quietly before Lila, a long hallway washed in gentle snow-white lantern light. Everything felt hushed, softened, as though the cafe wanted her to walk slowly, without fear. Portraits lined the walls in careful rows, painted faces, glowing landscapes, small winter scenes. At first they seemed still, ordinary, like memories caught in brushstrokes. But then, a subtle shift. A painted scarf lifted, swaying as if touched by a hidden breeze. A child in another frame turned his head, lantern glowing softly in his hand. Nothing moved quickly, nothing startled. The portraits breathed slowly, gently, as though waking from long, peaceful sleep. Lila stepped closer, watching a painted fox curl deeper into the arms of its painted keeper. Warm snowlight shimmered inside every frame, quiet, steady, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. In that soft corridor, time itself seemed to melt, not away, but into something calm, something patient, something waiting to be remembered. At the end of the corridor, Lila noticed a soft glow, a warm pulse of winter light drifting from a small alcove. She followed it gently, her footsteps barely whispering against the wooden floor. There, nestled in a deep armchair, lay a sleeping customer, an older woman wrapped in a knitted shawl the color of early morning frost. A blanket of snowlight hovered above her, thin, delicate, drifting like silver clouds. It wasn't cold. It shimmered warmly, settling over her chest in slow, soothing waves. Each breath the woman took made the snowlight brighten, a calm rise, a peaceful fall,
as if her dreams were glowing softly from within. Lila felt the air around her deepen, grow thicker with tranquility, as though she had stepped into the center of a lullaby. The woman smiled faintly in her sleep, a tiny, serene curve of comfort, and Lila realized that whatever the cafe held here wasn't magic meant to dazzle, but magic meant to heal.
Calum appeared beside her so quietly she didn't hear a single footstep. His presence felt like a lantern being set down, soft light, quiet warmth, a moment becoming steadier. He looked at the sleeping woman with tender understanding. Dreams, he whispered, are fragile things, especially the ones we forget. Lila listened, the hush around them deepening. The cafe gathers them, the small moments, the lost ones, the memories that slipped away before they ever had the chance to rest. The snowlight above the woman pulsed gently, as if responding to his voice. When someone is tired, he said softly, their memories drift loose. Some freeze, some wander, some fade. His glowing eyes lifted toward Lila. We keep them warm here. We give them a place to breathe until the heart is ready to hold them again. Lila felt something inside her soften, a tender, almost forgotten ache quietly warming under his words. Just as she was absorbing Calum's words, a sound drifted through the air. Barely there, a soft, distant melody carried on the hush of winter light. It wasn't a song she recognized. It felt more like a memory, a tune someone once hummed to her on a gentle, snowy evening long ago. The notes curled slowly around her, warm, delicate, like music woven from falling snowflakes. She paused, listening deeper, and the melody shifted, a higher note, a soft echo, a familiar warmth stirring in her chest. She blinked surprised at the sudden tightness in her throat. Why did the sound feel like it belonged to her? Calum's expression softened. Some melodies, he murmured, drift back when the heart is finally quiet enough to hear them. The music continued its tender rise and fall, a lullaby walking toward her from somewhere hidden within the snowlight. A soft brush against her leg pulled Lila from the melody's embrace. The fox had appeared beside her, silent as snowfall, warm as candlelight. Its silver eyes met hers, steady, knowing, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. It nudged her ankle gently, then turned its head toward a window at the far end of the corridor. The glass glowed faintly from within, not reflecting lantern light, but holding its own soft shimmer, like moonlight caught behind frost. The fox nudged her again, tail sweeping the floor in a slow, patient arc. Lila followed, drawn by something she couldn't name. The closer she came to the window, the warmer the air felt, a soft, dream-like warmth drifting from the glow behind the glass. Calum watched quietly, eyes filled with gentle understanding, as though the fox was guiding her not toward the window, but toward a truth she had not yet remembered. Lila stood before the glowing window, the fox curled at her feet like a small, steady heartbeat of light. Inside the glass, snowflakes drifted in slow spirals, not falling, but gathering, collecting,
shaping. The snow began to glow brighter, soft white first, then pale gold, then a gentle shade of rose that warmed the air around her. And slowly, a scene formed. A small hill covered in winter grass, a girl in a wool coat, laughter echoing softly, faint as a distant dream. Lila's breath trembled. She knew this place. She knew that coat. She knew that laugh. Light, free, unburdened. It was her. A memory she hadn't seen in years, maybe decades, reshaping itself from drifting snowlight. Warmth bloomed across her chest, part wonder, part ache, part something she wasn't ready to name. The snowlight pulsed gently, inviting her to remember. Lila stood near the window, the cup of snowlight tea warm between her hands. The fox curled quietly at her side. Outside, snowflakes drifted in gentle spirals, unhurried, thoughtful, as if deciding where to fall. But then, they stopped falling. They hovered instead, gathering in the cold air like tiny lanterns of frost. A faint shimmer pulsed through them, silver first, then blue, then a warm hint of dawnlight that softened the shadows around her. The air thickened with quiet expectation. The snow was not simply drifting anymore. It was listening, waiting, remembering. Lila felt her breath slow as the glowing flakes drew closer together, weaving themselves into the first faint outline of something familiar, something old, something hers. The floating snow tightened its shape, turning the empty air into a pale, glowing canvas. Lines appeared, soft curves, gentle edges, a distant hill gathering from light itself. Lila watched, hardly blinking, as the memory took its first quiet breath. There was the slope she used to run down, the small fence at the bottom, the lantern post that always flickered in the winter wind. Each detail shimmered like frost waking at sunrise. The air around her warmed, filled with the soft scent of childhood winter, wool mittens, cold pine, and the faint sweetness of snow settling on skin. It was impossible, yet tenderly real. A place she once knew, unfolding from drifting light. A place she thought she had forgotten. And then she appeared. A small girl in a thick wool coat, boots too big, scarf trailing behind her like a ribbon of laughter. Young Lila. Her tiny footprints pressed into the glowing snow with a soft crunch that echoed only in memory. She lifted her mittened hands, catching flakes that melted instantly, sending her into a giggle so light it seemed to brighten the entire scene. She spun in slow circles, carefree, unburdened, full of the kind of joy that only childhood understands. Lila felt her chest warm, a bloom of tenderness mixed with the faint ache of years long gone. It was beautiful. It was painful. It was hers. A piece of her heart she didn't know she had been missing. But then, the light shifted. Very slightly, almost shyly. The golden glow cooled to a pale, trembling blue. Young Lila's laughter softened, slowed, thinned into something uncertain. The hill stretched longer than it should. The shadows near the fence deepened in a way that did not belong to childhood joy. Snowflakes faltered mid-air, drifting unevenly as if the memory itself was remembering something heavier. Lila felt a small pinch of fear, not sharp, not dangerous, just the echo of a moment she had once buried. The younger version of herself turned toward a corner of the scene where the light refused to go. The air grew still. Too still.
A warm glow rose beside her, quiet as a held breath. Calum stepped forward, his presence gentle, yet unmistakably firm. He lifted a hand, not high, not forcefully, just enough. The snow responded instantly, brightening like a small dawn blooming in the air. The shadows recoiled, dimming into harmless softness. The trembling edges of the memory smoothed themselves under his calm guidance. "This part," he murmured, voice low, warm, steady, "is not meant for tonight." The darker corner faded, replaced by soft silver light. Young Lila's shape wavered, glowing gently before dissolving into drifting snow again. Lila breathed out, a long, quiet exhale she hadn't realized she was holding. As the memory dissolved, the cafe breathed with her, lanterns pulsing once, twice, like a soft heartbeat, shared through the wooden walls. Warmth swept through the room, settling around Lila like a comforting blanket of light. The last remnants of snow melted into tiny sparks that floated upward and vanished in silence. Calum lowered his hand, his eyes glowing faintly with quiet understanding. Some memories return only when they feel you're ready to hold them gently. The lights steadied, the air calmed. Lila placed a hand over her heart, feeling both lighter and fuller than before. The fox leaned against her leg, a soft reminder that she wasn't facing the night alone.
The cafe's windows shivered softly, the glass humming as the first heavy gust of wind pressed against it. Lila lifted her gaze, watching the gentle snowfall twist suddenly sideways, pulled by a force that felt older than the night. Snowflakes thickened, swirling into fast, uneven spirals that glittered briefly before dissolving into darkness. The storm did not roar, it whispered, low, breathy, like the quiet inhale before a long-forgotten memory speaks. Lanterns along the street flickered, their warm halos trembling in the rising wind. The air outside deepened to a smoky shade of blue, shadows stretching across the snow like long drifting ribbons. Lila felt a subtle tension in the air, as if the night itself was bracing for something. A storm had arrived, not wild, not violent, but purposeful. The snowfall outside thickened again, then changed. just for a breath, just for a single trembling heartbeat. The white flakes turned the color of deep ash, swirling through the air like smoke caught in moonlight. Lila blinked, unsure if her eyes were playing tricks or if the night had genuinely darkened. The blackened snow drifted downward in slow spirals, silent, weightless, unsettling only in its quiet impossibility. Then, with a soft flicker of wind, the darkness vanished. The flakes returned to white, gentle again, almost innocent. But the air held a new heaviness, a hush that pressed against the wooden walls of the cafe. It felt as though the storm had shown its true face for just a moment, then hidden it again, waiting.
At Lila's feet, the fox stirred. Its glowing fur dimmed slightly, shifting from warm gold to a nervous, flickering silver. It lifted its head, ears twitching sharply toward the door. A low, uneasy sound rumbled in its throat, not a growl, not a warning, but a restless tremor that vibrated gently against Lila's boots. The fox rose slowly, stepping closer to the entrance, tail lowered, body tense. In that quiet way, animals sense what humans cannot. Its paws barely touched the floor as it paced, once, twice, circling near the door before settling again, closer this time, as if guarding something or preparing for something it could already feel. Lila reached out, fingertips brushing its fur, and felt the soft, trembling pulse beneath its glow. Through the storm-thick window, a shape appeared. Not suddenly, not startlingly, but slowly, as though it had been walking for a long, long time. A silhouette, faint at first, formed against the swirling snow, taller than most, wrapped in layers that fluttered in the cold wind like dark, drifting wings. The figure moved steadily, each step quiet, purposeful, softened by the deep snow beneath. Lila leaned closer, fingertips brushing the glass, watching as the silhouette paused at the edge of the lantern glow. It did not knock, it did not call out, but it simply stood there, a still shadow, framed by the storm, watching the cafe with an unsettling patience that made the air grow colder. A small, cold tremor slipped through Lila's chest. Not panic, not shock, something quieter, older, the faint echo of a fear she thought she'd buried beneath years of grown-up calm. Her fingers tightened around her cup, the warmth suddenly fragile against the chill rising within her. The silhouette outside felt familiar, not in shape, not in face, but in presence, as though the storm had pulled something from her past and carried it gently to her doorstep. Her breath slowed, unsteady. The fox pressed against her leg, trying to anchor her, its glow warming in a protective pulse. Still, Lila's heart whispered quietly, "I know this feeling. I've known it before." The storm seemed to answer, a low, distant hum vibrating against the glass. Calum moved before she could speak. No rush, no panic, only calm, deliberate purpose.
He stepped toward the door, lifting one hand in a smooth, practiced motion. Light gathered at his fingertips, soft silver first, then pale blue, weaving into thin, glowing threads that fluttered like quiet, moonlit ribbons. He traced shapes into the air, each stroke gentle, slow, almost reverent. Rune after rune settled against the wooden door, sinking into the grain with a soft, warm pulse. The cafe exhaled, a low, comforting hum vibrating through the floorboards. Outside, the silhouette remained still, waiting in the storm. Inside, Calum lowered his hand, eyes glowing faintly. The night is shifting, but you are safe here, Lila.
The storm pressed closer to the cafe, its winds curling around the wooden walls like long, searching fingers of winter air. Lila held her breath, listening to the shifting howl outside, the soft rise and fall that had begun to feel less like weather and more like intention. Then, through the layered hum of wind and snow, she heard it, a whisper, faint, elongated, her name carried on a trembling rush of cold. Lila. The sound drifted through the window pane as gently as a memory brushing against the corner of her mind. Her chest tightened, fear and familiarity weaving together in slow, delicate threads. She stepped closer, drawn by something she couldn't quite name, something that felt as though the night had been waiting a long time to speak to her again. The wind whispered once more, softer than before, almost pleading. Lila placed her hand against the cool glass, the window trembling faintly under her touch. As the storm whispered again, a fragile thread of memory tugged gently at her mind. A small voice, younger, sunlit, full of winter laughter, echoed faintly inside her. A voice she hadn't let herself hear in years, maybe decades. She closed her eyes, breathing in slowly as the buried image drifted forward. A child standing in deep snow, reaching out to someone just out of sight, calling their name through a rising storm. Lila felt warmth and sorrow bloom together in her chest, the tender ache of something once loved and long forgotten. The truth wasn't clear yet, only a hazy outline, but she could feel it waiting patiently beneath the layers she had hidden from herself. The window fogged beneath her breath, as if urging her to remember.
Calum stepped beside her, his presence quiet, grounding, like a warm lantern set gently in the dark. He didn't touch her, but his calm settled through the air in soft, steady waves. "Storms like this," he murmured, his voice a low winter hush, "are drawn to what we bury." Lila swallowed, her fingers trembling slightly against the cold glass. Calum continued, eyes glowing faintly with a kindness that felt endless. "When memories are pushed too deep, they do not vanish. They drift and wander and wait for the moment they are needed again." The cafe lanterns flickered, shadows swaying gently along the wooden walls. "Repressing a memory," he said softly, "does not protect the heart.
it only delays its healing. Leela felt the truth settle into her chest, heavy, warm, inevitable. Before Leela could speak, the fox stepped forward, slow, delicate, its paws making the faintest taps against the wooden floor. It pressed itself gently against her leg, fur glowing with a warm, honey gold shimmer. The glow pulsed softly, rising and falling like a calm breath shared between them. Leela felt the warmth seep through her boots and into her bones, easing the pressure in her chest, loosening the tightness she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The fox looked up at her, eyes luminous, steady, full of a quiet understanding that felt ancient. As the storm whispered outside, the fox's glow grew gentler, creating a soft halo around them both. Leela exhaled, tension melting slowly from her shoulders. For a moment, she felt held, not by hands, but by warmth, memory, and something like trust.
The wind's voice changed. It no longer whispered her name with urgency or fear. Instead, it softened, gentled, unfolding into a long, drifting melody that wove through the falling snow like a winter lullaby. The sound swirled around the cafe, brushing the windows with notes so faint they felt like memories humming through the air. Lila leaned closer, eyes half closed, listening as the storm shaped a tune she almost recognized, a lullaby someone once sang when the world was simpler, smaller, warmer. Her chest tightened with the ache of familiarity, the tender pull of something just beyond reach. The cafe lights dimmed slightly, matching the rhythm of the storm's song, as though the entire room had fallen into step with the wind's quiet melody. For a moment, Lila felt wrapped in a sound she had forgotten she loved. The lullaby faded into a slow, steady hum that vibrated against the glass. Patient, inviting, waiting. Lila placed both hands on the sealed window, feeling the runes Calum had drawn glowing faintly beneath her fingertips. The fox pressed closer, offering its warm light. Calum stood silently behind her, not stopping her, only watching, trusting. With a trembling breath, Lila whispered, "I need to hear it clearly." She traced her fingers along the glowing runes. They shimmered, flickered, then dissolved into soft threads of silver light that drifted upward like tiny fireflies vanishing into air. The window unlatched with a gentle click. Cold wind swept inside, not harsh, not frightening, but cool and familiar, carrying the storm's whisper directly to her. Lila opened the window fully, ready to remember. Snow drifted across the tall front window, softening the last echoes of the fading storm. Lila stood perfectly still, hands resting against the warm counter, while a distant shape lingered just beyond the swirling frost. It didn't move quickly, only shifted gently, as if the wind itself was deciding how to reveal it. The fox pressed against her ankle, its quiet glow steady and protective. Calum's breath slowed somewhere behind her, not tense, not afraid, simply attentive. The silhouette brightened. Soft edges formed first, a shoulder, the tilt of a head, a calm, patient posture
that tugged at something deep inside her. Recognition bloomed slowly, not sharp, not painful, just a warm ache spreading through her chest. The figure stepped closer, snowlight gathering around it like a gentle lantern guiding itself home. The cafe door opened without a sound, no creak, no breeze, just a hush of warm air spreading outward as the figure entered. It moved like drifting snowfall, slow, elegant, unhurried, light wrapped around it in soft coils, glowing white at the center and deepening to pale silver around the edges. Each step left a faint shimmer on the wooden floor like footprints made of moonlit frost. The fox lifted its head, ears tilting forward, not wary, welcoming. Calum lowered his gaze in a quiet gesture of respect, the kind reserved for guests of great significance. Lila's breath caught. The gentle figure paused before her, light settling around them like a protective veil. And, though no words were spoken, she felt something, both familiar and long missed, reach softly toward her.
The glow shifted, subtle, like a memory finding its shape. A curve of a cheek, the familiar lift of a smile, eyes warm even without clear outlines. A wave of warmth rose through Leela's chest, so sudden her knees almost softened. She knew this presence, not from tonight, not from the cafe, but from years tucked away beneath quiet winters and unspoken longing. A name hovered on her lips, fragile as a snowflake moments before melting. The figure tilted its head softly, as if encouraging her. Leela whispered, barely breath, barely sound, "Is it really you?" The warmth grew. The light pulsed once, gentle and affirming. Leela closed her eyes as emotion washed through her. Grief, love, memory, and the indescribable comfort of something precious returning home after being lost to time. Snowlight rose from the floorboards, from the lanterns, from the air itself, a slow bloom of shimmering white circling them gently. The cafe seemed to breathe with them, each inhale a soft expansion of light, each exhale a warm settling around their shoulders. The fox curled beside Leela, its tail glowing brighter in calm encouragement. Calum watched with quiet reverence, hands folded loosely, as if guarding a sacred moment. The figure of light lifted one hand, a shape more suggestion than form, and the snowlight responded, spiraling upward like soft threads of memory and warmth. It wrapped around Leela and the visitor, binding them in a cocoon of gentle glow. For the first time in years, Leela felt held, not by arms, but by remembrance itself. The glow softened, dimmed slightly, not fading, but settling into something warmer, closer, more human. Lila's chest tightened, full of 1,000 things she had never said. Regret, fear, love, all tangled together like threads she never learned to untie. The figure reached forward, its touch more warmth than weight, and rested a gentle light against her hand.
Lila inhaled sharply. The warmth was forgiveness. Not spoken, not demanded, simply offered. A release she had longed for without knowing how to seek it. Her shoulders loosened. Her breath steadied. The ache behind her ribs eased at last. Tears gathered, soft, quiet, grateful. The visitor's glow brightened just enough to tell her that letting go did not mean losing. It meant remembering with peace. Outside, the last whisper of the storm drifted into silence. Snow fell in slow, gentle flakes, not swirling, not rushing, just settling like a deep, calm breath. The windows glowed softly, their icy edges melting into steady silver light. Inside the cafe, the air felt warmer, lighter, full, yet peacefully still. The visitor's glow began to soften, its form becoming a gentle shimmer, as if preparing to return to the place where memories rest. Lila's hand remained lifted in quiet farewell, not with sorrow, but with calm acceptance. The fox brushed against her, warm and reassuring. Caleb stepped beside her, voice low and kind. The storm listened, and it quieted because you did. Lila exhaled slowly, finally at peace with the night. The cafe had settled into a gentle hush, as if even the snowlight knew something important was ready to be spoken. Caleb stood near the counter, hands resting lightly on the warm wooden surface, his glowing eyes softer than Lila had ever seen them. The fox curled between them, a small anchor of calm. "Lila," Caleb murmured, his voice like drifting embers. The Snowlight Café was never just a place to rest. Snow swirled gently around the lanterns, responding to his words like living breath. It is a passage, a refuge for wanderers who carry unfinished memories, pain, longing, or truths too delicate to face alone. Lila's heart tightened softly. The storm outside had gone quiet, as if listening. Caleb lifted his gaze. Our purpose is to help souls remember, gently, and guide them back to peace. Caleb extended one hand, and a small swirl of snowlight rose from the floor, turning slowly in the still cafe air. As it spiraled upward, images shimmered within it. A figure walking through snowfall, a child laughing on a frozen pond, an elder sitting beside a candlelit window. Each scene floated past Lila as softly as breath. "These are the travelers," Caleb whispered. "People who wander into winter paths between waking and dreaming. They come here when something within them needs gentle tending, a memory to soothe, a truth to face, or a wound waiting to heal." The images faded into pale silver mist. Caleb lowered his hand as the last spark dissolved. "The cafe gathers them," he said, "guides them through their winters, and returns them lighter than before." Lila felt the warmth of understanding bloom like soft lamplight inside her chest. The fox lifted its head, eyes shimmering with quiet intelligence. Its tail glowed brighter, casting soft ripples of pale gold across the floorboards. Calum smiled gently. "He is no ordinary fox," he said, reaching down to let his fingers brush the creature's warm fur. "He is a guardian, a guide for lost paths, a gentle keeper of fragile hearts." The fox stepped forward, nudging Leela's ankle with familiar warmth. She felt the comfort of its presence settle around her like a small, steady fire. "He senses the places," Calum continued, "where memories tremble, where fear hides, where healing waits." The fox sat beside Leela, tail curling around her foot like a soft promise. "He led you," Calum murmured, "because he recognized what your heart had been trying to remember." The cafe lights dimmed just slightly, as if shifting to reveal something deeper. Snow drifted from the rafters, not falling, but floating in place, each flake glimmering with faint memory light. Calum gestured upward. "The snowlight chooses gently," he said. "It feels what a soul is carrying: grief, fear, regret, loneliness, and calls forth the memory most ready to soften." Leela watched as the snowflakes pulsed in quiet harmony, some shining brighter than others. Not every memory is opened, only those whose edges have already begun to thaw. The snow faded into a silver shimmer, drifting back into the air. The cafe doesn't force healing. It simply offers a place where the heart can breathe. Calum turned toward her fully, his expression gentler than snowlight. Calum turned toward her fully, his expression gentler than snowlight. "Lila," he said, "there is a reason the cafe found you." Her breath halted, caught on something between curiosity and a quiet ache she hadn't named. "You are connected to the snowlight paths," he continued. "You feel memories before they surface, sense truths beneath silence, and walk through winter without fear of its stillness." The fox pressed closer, as if agreeing. Lila's chest warmed, a soft flutter like awakening embers. "Most who enter here," Calum murmured, "are guided. But you—" He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "You resonate with the snowlight itself." Lila felt something shift gently inside her, a recognition, quiet but deep, as if a forgotten door had opened. The cafe brightened, not suddenly, but in a slow, embracing glow that wrapped around them like warm snowfall. Calum stepped beside her, voice low and full of gentle certainty. "The Snowlight Café does not choose lightly," he said, "and it has chosen you." Lila felt the words settle inside her like soft roots finding soil. Not heavy, not overwhelming, simply true. The cafe needs someone who can listen to the quiet parts of memory. Someone who can walk both paths, dream and waking, with kindness. The fox lifted its gaze, eyes glowing gold. Calum continued, "You are not just a visitor here. You are part of what comes next." The snowlight pulsed once around her, warm and welcoming. Lila exhaled slowly, a sense of purpose blossoming within her. Calm, steady, certain. Her winter journey was only beginning. The cafe doors drifted open with a whisper of light, revealing a long corridor woven from drifting snow. It wasn't a hallway made of walls or floors, but of memories floating in gentle layers, each one glowing softly, like lanterns in a winter fog. Lila stepped forward, the fox padding at her side, its tail casting warm ripples across the pale air. The snow beneath her feet shifted with every step, not crunching, but exhaling a soft hush that carried echoes of quiet moments long past. Scenes glimmered beside her, smiles she once knew, rooms filled with warmth, places she had forgotten she'd ever loved. The corridor moved with her, stretching ahead like a calm river of light. Lila breathed slowly, letting the stillness wrap around her as she followed the path meant only for her. Every step she took sent a gentle sound through the snowlit corridor, not quite an echo, but a soft reply, as though the path itself recognized her presence. Footsteps from long ago seemed to walk beside her, faint and delicate, like memories aligned with her own pace. Sometimes she heard a laughter shadow, or the murmur of a voice she once trusted. Not loud, never startling, just enough to soften the air around her. The snowflakes drifting above tilted as she passed, responding to her heartbeat, floating in slow spirals that glowed like tiny lanterns. The fox kept close, ears perked, as if listening to something hidden in the soft echoes. Lila let the rhythm steady her breathing. The corridor was alive in a quiet, gentle way, a living memory walking beside her with every soft step.
The corridor shifted, snow gathering ahead into a bright, trembling shape. Lila slowed, feeling a familiar ache rise gently in her chest. The scene formed slowly, a small room with winter light spilling through a frosted window. Her younger self sat alone at a wooden table, hands folded tightly, eyes glistening with unshed tears. It was a day Lila had buried deeply, a quiet hurt she never gave herself permission to soothe. She approached the memory with slow, steady steps. The child looked up, not startled, only hopeful. Lila knelt beside her and whispered softly, "I'm here now." Snowlight wrapped the memory in warm gold, melting the ache into something gentler. Her younger self smiled faintly, a fragile smile finally allowed to breathe. The scene dissolved into shimmering light, whole for the first time. As the memory faded, a gentle warmth spread through the corridor, flowing outward like sunrise through fog. It wrapped around Lila in slow, calming waves, not bright, not overwhelming, just warm enough to reach the quiet spaces inside her chest. The snowflakes around her shifted to shades of soft gold, their glow pulsing in a comforting rhythm that matched her breathing. The fox lifted its head, ears flicking, tail brushing against her leg with a reassuring sweep. Lila placed a hand over her heart, feeling the warmth settle deeper, steady and real. For the first time in what felt like years, her thoughts felt light, untangled, unburdened, free. The corridor brightened gently, as if acknowledging her quiet healing, and Lila took a step forward, carried by the warmth blooming inside her.
The fox trotted ahead, its paws leaving faint trails of shimmering light across the pale snow. It looked back at her, eyes bright, tail swaying like a lantern's flame, then continued forward with quiet certainty. Lila followed, the corridor narrowing into a soft tunnel that curved gently toward a distant glow. As they walked, the memories around her dimmed into silvery mist, not disappearing, just settling, like snow returning to the earth. At the end of the path stood a door made of pale winter wood, light leaking softly from its edges. The fox paused before it, lifting its head proudly, as if presenting her with something sacred. Lila felt a calm hush fill the air, a sense that this door was more than an exit. It was a threshold waiting for her choice. Lila approached the door, the glow around it warming the tips of her fingers before she even touched it. The fox settled beside her, tail wrapped neatly around its paws, eyes shining with quiet encouragement. Behind her, the memory corridor breathed in soft pulses, a reminder of everything she had mended, everything she had faced. Before her, the door hummed with a calm invitation. She sensed what waited beyond it, a path back to the cafe, or a path beyond, towards something new and quietly unknown. The choice wasn't rushed, it wasn't heavy. It simply existed, gentle and patient, like snow waiting for the first step. Lila rested her palm against the wood, feeling its warmth meet her own. Whatever waited ahead, she was ready.
Lila stepped out of the gentle snow corridor, the door closing behind her like a sigh that knew its time had passed. The cafe greeted her with its familiar warmth, lamps glowing softly, wood creaking kindly, the scent of pine and winter tea floating in the air like an embrace she didn't have to ask for. Calum looked up, not surprised, not startled, simply ready, as if he had been waiting for her footsteps to find this room again. Calum moved with slow, deliberate grace, the kind reserved for moments that matter. He chose a cup the color of quiet dawn. He scooped a blend that glimmered faintly, silver and pale gold, like threads spun from melted frost. The kettle hissed softly, not boiling, just breathing. Steam curled upward in calm spirals, as if the air itself was preparing a blessing. He poured. The tea shimmered. A winter glow gathered inside the cup, as though recognizing the hands it was meant for.
Lila wrapped both hands around the warm ceramic. The glow inside did not blind or flash. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat she had forgotten was hers. Her reflection surfaced on the surface of the tea, but softer, brighter, whole. Not the girl who had arrived shaken and half frozen by memories she feared, but the girl who had walked through soft snow to face them and returned carrying light. Her breath trembled, not from cold, from knowing. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet settling, a gentle rearranging inside her chest, like snowflakes finding their place on a window. Acceptance. Soft. Real. Undeniable. She let the warmth sink into her palms, her shoulders, her breath. And the moment she did, the cafe brightened by a single shade, as if relieved. Snow began to fall from the ceiling, weightless, soundless, glowing faintly like the memory threads she had once feared to touch. The flakes drifted around her, landing on tables, on books, on the counter,
melting instantly into small glimmers of light. The fox trotted nearby, its fur shimmering brighter than before, eyes warm and approving. Calum said nothing. He didn't have to. The cafe was speaking in its own language, one made of snowfall and healing. The last sip was warm in a way that felt like dawn breaking behind her ribs. The cafe lights shifted subtly, winter blues softening into early spring gold. Something new was blooming inside her, not a memory, not a wound, not a question, but possibility, quiet, steady, growing. The fox sat beside her. Calum watched gently, and Leela knew, without being told, that this moment was a beginning, not an ending.
The first light of dawn bloomed quietly over the sleeping town. Not bright, not sharp, but soft, like a promise whispered through pale clouds. Snow on the rooftops caught the early glow, shimmering faintly as if the night had left behind a final gift. Leela stood near the doorway, breathing in the crisp air. Morning felt different now, not cold, not heavy, but new. Behind her, the cafe lights dimmed in a slow, peaceful rhythm. Shelves blurred into soft outlines. Teapots shimmered like they were turning back into mist. The wooden counters lost their edges, becoming gentle strokes of warm color. The cafe wasn't disappearing in fear or sorrow. It was returning to where places like this rest until they are needed again.
Calum stepped closer, calm, steady, his eyes bright with a warmth that held no sadness. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture as old as the cafe's magic. "Thank you, Lila," he said softly, "for walking through your winter. No speeches, no explanations, just truth, offered gently into the morning air." She wanted to answer, to say something as meaningful, but her throat tightened with quiet emotion. So she only nodded, hoping he could feel everything she couldn't speak. A warm weight pressed against her leg. The fox. Its fur glowed faintly with that familiar winter light, soft silver woven with gentle gold. It curled around her ankle, rubbing its cheek against her boot, not asking her to stay, not urging her to go, just saying goodbye in the way only it could. Lila knelt, burying her fingers in its warm fur. A quiet breath left her as the fox's glow brushed softly against her palms. Then, with one last circle around her feet, the fox stepped back. She turned toward the silent street, its snow untouched, waiting. Her first step pressed gently into the fresh surface, not sinking, not stumbling, just moving forward with a heart that felt lighter than it had in years. Each breath she took carried a soft warmth, as if the winter tea was still settling inside her chest. A faint chime rang behind her, the sound of a door closing softly for the last time. Lila turned. The cafe's outline wavered, shimmered, glowed, and then dissolved into a gentle veil of snowlight, fading with the dawn. No tragedy, no darkness, just a quiet ending to a chapter that had already served its purpose. Lila stood still for a moment, heart warm, eyes soft, and whispered, "Thank you."
The snow carried her words into the morning. Then she walked forward, toward whatever waited next, the last traces of the cafe glimmering behind her like fading stars.
Lila stood quietly in the middle of the winter street, the morning light settling around her like a calm embrace. No rush, no storm, just stillness, soft and open, as if the world was finally exhaling with her. Her breath rose in gentle curls of white before fading into the cold air. A single snowflake drifted downward, slow, wandering, almost thoughtful. It landed on her sleeve without melting, glowing faintly with a warm gold that didn't belong to ordinary winter. She touched it gently, feeling not cold but comfort, as if the cafe's magic had chosen to leave her one small piece to keep.
A soft breeze moved through the quiet street, brushing her hair, stirring her coat, carrying with it a whisper as light as breath. Not words, not exactly, but a familiar feeling, a voice made of wind and memory and warmth. The kind of whisper that didn't need to be understood to be felt. Lila closed her eyes for a brief moment, then opened them with a small, genuine, unchained smile. Not the smile of forgetting, but the smile of someone who finally remembered without pain. A quiet peace settled through her chest, steady, gentle, true.
As she began to walk, the glowing snowflake on her sleeve shifted, brightened, then melted into a thin ribbon of soft light. It curled around her wrist like a warm thread, following her steps, joining her as naturally as a shadow. Not the cafe's magic now, but hers, a small piece of winter light, choosing to go home with her. Just as she reached the end of the street, a faint sound drifted through the air, a single chime, soft and distant, like a memory calling one last time. The cafe's bell. Not asking her back, not summoning her, just whispering its gentle farewell. Lila paused, smiling again, the kind of smile meant only for cherished things, and continued walking through the quiet morning snow, carrying her new warmth into the day ahead.